Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I will be going over how I painted this 2017 Buick Encore, paint code WA475A, which is a brownish gold with a lot of metal flake in it. It is a builder that somebody brought in, a salvage vehicle, and we're just freshening it up for them. Make it look hopefully pretty decent at the end. So I already wiped these parts down with water-based and solvent-based cleaner. We want to get them as clean as possible. And I use microfiber towels, so there's barely any lint. I really don't get any lint with microfiber towels. They're much better than the ones that you buy and just throw away. That's a big recommendation for me, to use microfiber for all the cleaning. Right now we're putting sealer on. Sealer is one of the main things for new parts. I mean, it acts as a bonding agent for the base coat. It ensures that the paint adheres on top of it correctly. It creates a smooth, consistent surface, and it fills up any minor imperfections like sand scratches. Say you had a couple deeper sand scratches or something, it fills them in. So if you were to just base over it, you would see them scratches after, especially on a color with a lot of metallic in it. And you can shade it so it covers well, you know, so that your base coat covers well. And also it helps, like if you have any feather edges of primer where you broke through, sometimes if you put base coat on top of that, you'll lift that edge, and this seals it and makes a good barrier for the base coat. So I mean, all new parts should be sealed. Right now I'm just putting a sealer on the, when I do the bumpers, I always go around all the edges first. They're a pain in the butt to get, so I just go all the way around the bottom, get all the nooks and crannies, get that real good and make sure they're covered. Got to feather it in some spots, and then I go over the top and I give it, this is an Iwata LPH 400 gun that I'm going to use for everything on this. And for the sealer, I am spraying it at 20 pounds of pressure, and I'm putting a medium to wet coat on it. We want it to cover. We don't want it dry. We want a closed coat, it would be called, so it's nice and uniform finish. An open coat would be where there's little dry patches in between. You want it closed. So I'm doing about probably 80% overlap with the sealer at 20 pounds of pressure, and I'm probably 5 inches away. And that works best for me. If that's too close for you, you can back it up a hair and just slow down your movements, you know. But I'm old school. I'm used to the SATA Jet 90S many years ago, where you had that pressure cranked up and I was in there close and just flying, spraying. So I like to move a little quicker. But that doesn't mean they can't do it the other way and get just as good of a finish. So we're going to get this coat of sealer on here, and then we'll check everything out, and we'll tell you where to go next. A little info on me is I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and I've made so many mistakes in that time. We never had YouTube like this when I was young, so I mean, there was no, you learned from somebody or you learned from your mistakes, and I learned from my mistakes quite a bit. And that's the main thing, is if you learn. Everybody's going to make mistakes. That's part of the game. It's just how you learn from them will make you a better painter. I take this seriously. We're in a small town, and it's my name going out there, so I put pride in my work, and I'm my own worst critic for everything. I mean, it's never satisfactory to me. And it shouldn't be, you know, if you want to be good, you should always be looking to get better. Right now I'm just blowing it off a little bit. I believe I sprayed the clear base coat on here, and I'm just drying it off a little bit. The clear base coat is T490, which I use PPG EnviroBase. T490, and that's mixed 20% with T494. And I put just a medium wet coat on it. And this is what it should look like. You want a satin finish, kind of like an eggshell once it's all dry. And that gives the base that you're going to be blending on a nice uniform finish. Same thing with the sealer. You want it to be eggshell. If you run your finger along the edge, you don't want it sticking. Nice smooth finish. This will give us a nice substrate for our base coat to go on top. All right, now I'm taking my base coat, which I mix with only 10% reducer from my first coat. 10% because I'm using EnviroBase. They recommend 20%. I do 10% on almost all of my jobs because I want coverage. First coat is coverage. That's all you're looking for. I'm just doing a slight little blend. I'm just getting color on the end there and giving a slight wrist flick just to get the blend started. That's all. Now on these parts, we want coverage. So I'm doing, the gun is at 20 pounds of pressure, and I'm putting it on pretty heavy. Not super heavy, but about a nice medium wet coat. You don't want runs, but you want to get it on there because you don't want to keep putting coats on. So I do about, I think an 80% overlap I'll do when I do these. You're just always looking. You got to go in here with a plan. I always say that. Go in with a plan and then try to stick to it. If you go in without a plan, you're just going to wing it, and then if things get off track, you're going to get overwhelmed. So go in there with a plan and just try to stick to it, and things will work out. It can always be fixed. Here we go. See, I move a little quicker, and about an 80% overlap. Medium to wet coat. What I do on these new panels is I put a medium to wet coat on it, and then I back off a hair, and then I half trigger back over it. I'm only pulling the trigger down halfway here just to get a little more coverage. I don't want 2 full wet coats, but if I half trigger it, I'm still getting coverage, but it's not getting too much film build on there. We want to try to get this done in 3 coats. The water base is a little slower, but I really like it. A lot of people don't like the PPG EnviroBase, but I really do. I think the color match is excellent on it, and it's a little bit slower, like I said, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives for me on this. Especially the color match. To me, it's by far the best I've used. And I was a Sikkens tech rep for a while, many years ago, and I loved Sikkens, but I actually think that this matches better, to me anyway. But that's my personal preference. Everybody likes their own. All these paint systems are really good, otherwise they wouldn't still be around. But you just got to figure out what you like, and this is what I like. Same thing here on this bumper. I'm going around all the edges, all the hard to reach spots. You know, you want them covered, and if you just spray over the top, you're not going to get them covered. So I put a nice coat on there. It's a pain in the ass to reach these corners on a lot of these bumpers the way they're made with all the angles and everything. Sometimes you got to go underneath it to spray some of these edges, like where the grill lines up, and you just got to do what you can do to get in there and get some coverage. And then I will go over it. Like I said, probably about an 80% overlap. You'll see. If you don't like going this fast, just slow down a little bit, back it up a hair. I like to go closer and faster because when it comes out of the gun, when your paint comes out of the gun, that first couple inches, it atomizes super fine. And super fine means less peel and a thinner coat. So that's what I like about it. So I'm putting it on that way because I'm used to that. But you can back up. But the farther you get away, the less atomization. The drops catch together and they make bigger drops. So that's going to give you, you know, your orange peel. But that doesn't mean you can't have a great paint job doing it that way, as long as you don't get carried away and go like 10 inches back or something. So we'll finish up here. Notice the overlap. And it's pretty wet on there. If you have model on this coat, it doesn't matter. We'll work through that on the next two coats. This is just getting coverage. Get coverage. After this, I'm going to get the Sun Gun in there, which the Sun Gun is an amazing tool for anybody painting. When I was younger, I never had it, and I learned the hard way that what I thought was model was actually, I didn't have coverage, so I was seeing what was underneath the base coat, and I thought it was model, but it wasn't coverage. It looked good in the booth, and then you take it outside and you're like, what happened here? It's the sun that shows through it, and that's where everybody's going to see it. So if you take this Sun Gun, you can look at your panels and see the coverage. You can see if there's any model. You can see your blends really well. It's just an awesome tool, and I think especially every beginner painter should have one to check their work. I use it all the time, and like I said, I've been doing this 32 years now. I'm gonna tack rag it off. I tack rag between every coat. I will preach that. I know a lot of people don't, but I use the air blower in one hand and the tack rag, and I'm just gliding it on there. I want to get any dust, pollen, anything that fell in there that can easily come off with a tack rag. Why not get it off? And a tack rag also works as it helps with static electricity. I mean, not greatly, but it does help with getting the charge out of the static electricity. And we'll do anything we can to get a clean paint job. And I do this between every coat up to the clear. And I know there's going to be people that say, don't do that, but if you paint right, you should barely have any overspray on these. I mean, that tack rag should still be pretty clean when you're done here. So we're done here. And we will, I don't know if I'm going to show you right now with the Sun Gun or if I'm going to get another coat on there, but I will show you here. This second coat now that I put on, I put my first coat on, 10% reducer with the base coat. With this second coat, I do 20% reducer, 20% water because I use water base. Whenever you're doing metallic, I'll preach this also, always use an extra slow reducer. I don't have extra slow with my water base, So to get extra slow, I add more water, because the more water you add, the wetter it's going to be. I backed up a little bit here and I dropped the pressure down to 18, and I'm going out a little farther. I'm just extending the blend out a little farther. This isn't full strength, so it's going to be a little more transparent than that first coat, so we can even out that blend, but still get some coverage. So we'll go over everything one more time. I know you'll probably get bored watching this, but you know, a lot of newbies want to know this stuff and actually see somebody do it. And hopefully this helps somebody. If it helps somebody, then it's worth it. I had a painter that I prepped for, and I just tried to soak everything in from him, and that's how I got started. And I really wanted to learn, so I soaked it in as much as I could, and he was a good painter, so I lucked out. But he was only there for a couple years while I was prepping, so I had to learn a lot of this on my own too. And we do a lot of custom work too, so hopefully I'll be able to show some of that. Like I said, we back this off a hair. And you know, for these paint jobs, I'm doing this all with one gun on a few of these videos, just so you know that you don't have to have a different gun for the sealer, for the base, for the clear. You can do it all with one gun, so you don't have to go out there and spend, you know, these guns are $1,000 each. I'm going to do another video where I actually just ordered a gun from Harbor Freight, and I got it for $7. It was $6.99. It was $9.99, and I had a $3 coupon, so I bought it for $6.99. And I'm going to paint a car on here and show you that you don't have to spend $1,000 if you're doing a job in the backyard, doing your own car. If it's just like a one and done thing that you got to do, don't buy an expensive gun. And I'll show you, hopefully pretty soon here, our $7 gun is going to do a nice paint job. And I'll use it for everything. Sealer through the clear. Everything. Alright, we're just finishing up here. Backing off a little bit. Like I said, that first coat I was probably about 5-6 inches. This coat I backed up maybe an inch or two, and we're taking the overlap from 80% that I was doing on the first coat to probably 75 to 70%, and I'm slowing down a little bit because, like I said, this is water on here, so if you're going too slow, you don't want that when you're spraying water. Same thing if you're spraying extra slow reducer in a solvent base. It's going to puddle up, it's going to be too wet, and we're trying to get coverage but even out the metallics right now. We're kind of doing both with this. The last coat is just going to be to get our metallic orientation or our drop coat, and it's just going to finish up our blend a little bit. Things sound hard, but if you can watch and learn like this, it makes things so much easier. Here's the sun gun. This works so nice. You just come in here and you can see everything with the lights off. It shows you if you have coverage, it shows if you have model, it shows how things are laying down. It's just, for a beginner, everybody should have this, in my opinion. If you want quality work, you can't see it. You can't see the things that are hiding without this. And I go over every job I do with this, especially my blends. If it doesn't look right, then it probably isn't right. You want a gradual blend. Otherwise you're going to have a halo, and you shouldn't have any dryness in your blends. If you have dryness, So I'm going to show you this tack rag. Look how clean this is. We should barely have any color on here. You're bound to get a little bit, but we should barely have any color coming off of this. If you do, that means that the overspray is dry, that you're not going slow enough with reducer. You need extra slow reducer, or in this case, with the water base, some more water we're going to add. So then when we flick that wrist, it's not drying before it hits the panel. It's still wet when it hits the panel. It's got to be wet when it hits the panel to adhere. Otherwise, it's sitting on top of the panel. And a lot of people don't tack rag until, you know, after they're done basing. And to me, that's a mistake, because if that base coat is sitting on top of the panel, it's not adhered to it. So you're putting clear coat over base coat that's not adhered to the panel. So you could have delamination down the road. You know, it might not be right away, but a year down the road, it could be the clear could flake off because that base coat is not adhered properly. So you want extra slow reducer when blending these hard colors, so the droplets are wet when they hit the panel on your blends. Because you have to back up on these orientation coats or drop coats and drop the pressure down. And a lot of times, if it's too hot, or if you don't have extra slow reducer, it ends up sand piling or being grainy on that edge, and that's going to give you a halo because it's a different texture. See, look at that. Very little, and that's how it should be. If you have texture or sand piling, then you're going to have problems. It's not going to match when you're looking down the side. I'm going to go over color match at some point too, about putting color chips. You know, if you're working in a shop and you have color chips in your paint system that you can put up to it. A lot of people don't realize that you have the face and side tone, or the face and the flop. And a lot of people look at that face and they match that up and they think, ooh, this is a great match. And then when they paint it, you get it outside and you're looking from the side and it looks terrible because it's too dark usually. And when you have these color chips, your face and your side tone, you need your side tone to match better than your face. If your side tone matches excellent and your face is a little off, that's okay. You can blend the face, but you cannot blend that side tone. So if that face is a little bit off, just make sure that your side tone is better than your face. If you have to choose between the two, make sure that your side tone is a better match. But we'll go over that in another one. I'm going to be cranking out some videos here pretty soon. I think I can help some people, and I hope to learn from some people too. I know I watch a lot of Paint Society, and he's great. He's probably one of the best ones on here. And we're going to get some on here too. Right now I'm clearing at 20 pounds of pressure. And I'm probably about 6 inches away. You want a good medium wet coat on it. You don't want this to look like your final coat. You want to get it on there, but you don't want it running, you know. You want it to look decent, but get a good base down so our next coat we can really lay out. We're not going to lay it out because we want it to match factory orange peel. And on Buicks like this, there is quite a bit of orange peel. So, I mean, if you make it look too good, it's going to be noticeably. It's going to look like a different color because the reflection is going to be totally different. So you want it to match that factory orange peel. And that's easier said than done sometimes because some of these factory cars are just terrible. This one had quite a bit of orange peel, so I'm using a medium reducer in it, and I added a little bit extra medium because I wanted it to tack up quicker, and that's going to give me smaller orange peel, which is what this had. If we wanted it to lay down better, we would use a slow reducer or a slower reducer, and I'd probably get in there closer so the atomization was very fine and I'd just move quicker. But you can lay this out like glass too, but it all depends on the job. Here on the bumper, we got to hit all those hard to reach areas. Got that done. I'm going to put our second coat on here now. I waited probably about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. You want to make sure that it's hand slick. You don't want it stringing to your finger. Like I'll touch where the handle is. I'll touch on there just to make sure that it's ready for the next coat. You don't want it wet because then you can get solvent pop, because you're trapping the solvent in that first coat under the second coat. And the only way that can come out is once it dries, it's going to pop through and you're going to see all this solvent pop. So you got to make sure you give it enough time to release the solvent for the next coat. This coat I'm slowing down a little bit, looking at it from all angles as I'm painting. I always have the fluorescent lights in my vision as I'm painting, and I'm looking at it to see how it looks. My head is constantly looking at it, making sure that the orange peel is how I want it, and making sure everything's covered, checking out my blends, checking for any dust or anything. I took these panels, or the door, off of the vehicle to blend it because it's much easier than taping the whole vehicle up. This is our last coat here. We're just gonna, like I said, I'm always checking it out. This is about a 75 to 80% overlap. Nice and smooth. You want your gun at a 90-degree angle is what you really like. But I mean, don't be like a robot. Just let your hand go. If you're too stiff and just trying to focus on that 90-degree angle, it's not going to work out right. So just go with the flow. Think of 90 degrees in your head and just be natural movements. It's going to make a much better paint job than a stiff, rigid like a robot. Checking it all out. On to the last one now. These bumpers can be a pain too for getting runs off of a lot of these edges, but if you go over it like this, it makes things much easier. You just go around all the edges first, hit them all, and then just go over the whole top, and then you don't even have to worry about trying to focus on these edges after you got that top done. This color has a lot of metal flake in it, and there were a few variants for it, and I think we found one that was pretty close, at least blendable. Like I said, this is a builder, a salvage vehicle that they just rebuilt, but we still want it to look good. They're paying for this, so I take it pretty seriously because, like I said, that's my name going out there. And I also prepped these. I like to do my own prepping. I don't like other people to prep for me, especially out of house, because the prep job makes your paint job. I mean, if you don't have it prepped well, you're not going to have a good paint job. And that's the one thing, even if other people prep it for you and you try to lay down the best you can, it always comes back to the painter. They always look at it and say, oh, that's a terrible paint job. But you know, it's because of the prep work. You got to focus on the prep work. Even though it's tedious, you have to get it done for an excellent result. And you know, I learned that when I was younger. I probably didn't take it as seriously as I do now, because it's you know, tedious, and you have to pay attention to the fine details. And that's something I really put my pride in now, is I pay attention to everything. And I want when this goes out, I don't want it to ever come back. I don't want them to look at it and say, oh, this isn't right, or it doesn't look good, or it doesn't match. I do these jobs like I'm doing my own, and that's the truth too. I mean, I don't want any negative feedback, which you're bound to get some at some point. There are some people that are just never satisfied, but you know, if you do a good job, it's hard to complain, because a lot of times the factory paint jobs are not that great. Sometimes it's hard to make it look that bad. Put this coat on there, and then I just run a half trigger over the top of it, especially like on the front bumper like this. I'll run my regular coat and then I'll half trigger it back over it. Just, it's nice to have that extra film build, especially on a bumper for rock chips. But we have sealer, we have base, 3 coats of base on here, and 2 coats of clear. And we shouldn't have a problem with that. All right, we're gonna check this out, check it over one more time. And then we'll get the sun gun in here, I believe. Check it out. Oh, just put the camera on it. We'll take a walk around. You can see that there's no base coat on the end. You want it to match factory, so there's no base coat over on that end by the handle. Just a nice even transition where we blended. We have full coverage in the beginning, down to nothing on the end. And you can't see that in the blend at all. And when you do it, like I said, you're not going to get no halos. This works for me excellent. This is, I think I have this system down pretty well where I could paint anything. And no model at all. Just checking everything out. I like to check from all angles, and I want you guys to see here too. Looks good. I'll show you real quickly after outside, just a quick picture of it, because this went out quickly at the end here, but I was able to get a picture of it. These other videos I do, I will put more information in it. If you guys like these videos, please like and subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions, hit me up and I'll get back to you. Thank you.